Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Reads Podcast, the show where I talk about books and only books and everything book related. Today, I am joined by Mr. Matt Witten, and Matt has a very impressive career and resume. He's a TV writer, novelist, playwright, and screenwriter who has written for shows like Law and Order, House, Pretty Little Liars, and many other shows. But he's also an author. His thriller, The Necklace, has been published in 8 different languages and optioned for a film by Leonardo DiCaprio. His latest thriller, titled 51%, came out back in April of this year, and NBC has actually hired him to co-write a TV pilot adaptation of 51%. And today he's here. He's going to share a lot more about his writing journey, share more about his background in writing, and just kind of share his life story. So, Matt, thank you so much for wanting to come on the podcast today. I am really looking forward to hearing what you have for us. So, welcome to Southern Reads.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you for inviting me.
So, you've had this huge resume and you've done so many wonderful things in life, but take me back to the beginning a little bit and kind of just share with me and my audience a little bit about what got you into writing.
Well, I started writing when I was 6, and I was writing poems about how my beloved Baltimore Oriole baseball team was going to defeat the hated Yankees. And then when I was in 10th grade, I got a crush on my drama teacher, and she suggested that I write a play, so I did. And it got performed at the local church for the women's group, and I got $10, so I was hooked. Then when I was 18, I got diagnosed with, I did not get diagnosed. I had a mystery illness that was not diagnosed, and I promised myself that if I ever got well, that I would remember that writing was at the core of what I do, and I would stick with writing no matter how tough things got. So I did get well, thankfully, about 2.5 months later, and I've been writing ever since. And I've stuck to my vow to keep writing, except for one time when things got a little tough and I did apply for law school. But once I got in, I said, no, I'm a writer. So I kept at it. So I kept doing it. And my first love was playwriting. And, I did that for a while. And then I got into novel writing. And then kind of out of nowhere, I got, what do you call it, invited to Hollywood to write for TV. Did that for about 15 or 20 years. And then in the last 7 or 8 years, I've gotten back into novel writing and I'm really enjoying it. So that's my story, writing story in a nutshell.
Yeah, and you've worked on multiple projects. You've gone from just small books and short stories, writing for these hugely successful TV shows that I think any person growing up watched and knew. Um, do you remember the first show that you wrote for?
Sure. I got hired to write an episode of a homicide, a freelance episode of homicide. And I got that because the guy who ran Homicide had seen a play that I had written in New York City. So he asked me to write a freelance. And then about a year and a half later, the head writer of Law and Order um, read a play that I had written and invited me to come pitch to him in New York City a couple of TV ideas for a freelance episode. And he did not like any of my ideas, but we came up with a different one together that I wound up writing. And he liked that episode and called me up to hire me to come onto staff for Law and Order.
This has always been kind of a thing that, I've always wondered about these questions. How long does it take normally to write a TV script for one episode?
Well, there's a couple parts to the process, and the first thing you do once you have agreed on basically what the episode will be about is that you write up an outline of the episode. And the outline is maybe 10 to 14 pages single spaced. And it's maybe a paragraph or two on each scene in the episode. Every episode of TV, and I'm talking about hour-long episodes, every episode of TV is maybe, depending on the show, anywhere from 30 to 40 scenes. And also depending on how you define what a scene is. Um, so anyway, you work on that. And if it's a show like Law and Order where each episode is self-contained, you work on it, yourself in your office at the studio or at home. And and you write it. Or you might be writing with one co-writer. A lot of episodes of Law and Order I co-wrote. So the two of us would be in an office. And as to how long that part of the process would take, that would take maybe um, 2 to 2.5 weeks, something like that. And then we would give the outline to the head writer. The head writer would then proceed to trash it, or at the very least have notes for it. And so then we would work on his notes and get him back the outline maybe in a week. Then maybe he'd give us other notes. And then we'd finish it, and the outline would go off to the studio, and they would have notes. Then the outline would go off to the network, and they would have notes. Depending on the show, sometimes it would happen pretty quickly. If it was a long established show like Law and Order, that part of the process would be quick. But if it was a relatively new show that the network was nervous about, or the studio was nervous about, or wanted to make sure they really put their imprint on the show, then that might take longer. So I would say to sum up, the outline, maybe 2 weeks for the first draft, another week or two for the second draft, and then the TV episode, if I would co-write it, maybe it would be 1 week. If it was writing it on my own, maybe 2 weeks. And then you go at the whole notes again. You get a note from the head writer and you rewrite it. Then maybe the head writer takes his own pass on it, where they, rewrite the script. Then it goes to the studio. They have some notes. Then you rewrite it. Then it goes to the network. They have some notes. So I would say from the first glimmer of an idea to the full-on, finished script, it would be maybe 2 months, or roughly. The process is a little different for a serialized show. Like most shows now, everybody's in the writer room, or most of the writers are in the writer's room together working on the show. And in that case, instead of the outline taking 2 weeks, it might take more like 1 week or a little bit less. So that part of the process can be shorter if you have a whole room of people coming up with brilliant ideas on what the show should be. Um, Plus, the head writer is often in the room then, so you don't have to go to the step of giving it to him and giving it to them and getting their notes. It'll happen right there. So that's a that's a long answer to your short question. It's amazing actually to me how short it takes because I don't know. It's like you don't have much time and then boom, the episode is being shot.
Yeah, I kind of was surprised that you said 2 weeks. I feel like these are things that work on for months, and I feel like they work on this during the summertime because most of the shows that they come on new in the fall, they'll kind of run throughout the fall season into spring, and in summer they have kind of a break, and then they come back for their new season back in like September or October. That's kind of when new shows decide to start coming back on. Did you ever do table reads, and did the house writers ever kind of be in the same room with the actors doing kind of a table read or anything?
Yeah, for a lot of shows there will be a table read, and it's exactly that. Everybody sits around a table, the actors and the writers of the episode will sit around and hear it read, and that's very helpful. And sometimes afterwards, the actors will get together with the writer individually or with the head writer and say, "Oh, I think this could be a little different. I think we could work on this." So yeah, that's definitely part of the process. You know, I'll tell you, talking about writing a script. Really, the hardest part is coming up with a good story, coming up with a good outline. Once you've got a good outline and a good story, you're in pretty good shape. And especially these continuing shows, they have, the characters are already established. So you've got your characters, you got a good story. You know, you really can write an episode, in a week or two. A TV episode is maybe 55 pages long. And if you can imagine writing 10 pages in a day when you have your whole outline figured out for you, it's doable. You could do it. People could. All it takes is a good story. That's really the toughest part of it.
So you worked on a lot of these TV shows for, as you had said, about 15, 20 years. What made you decide to kind of put that kind of work to the side and focus more on your author work and writing your novels? Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write books as well.
Well, I started out writing stage plays, and that was my first passion. And then when I was in my 30s, I realized that my favorite form of entertainment to do was to put my feet up and read a murder mystery. That was my favorite thing. I liked it, as much as going to plays or even more so. And so I decided this is the thing that I like the most, reading the most or experiencing the most. Why don't I try writing one? So I did. So I was just following what I liked the most. Writing for TV, it's not something I pursued. It's something that came to me, and I wrote for TV, it was very exciting, but it was nothing that I was really like, super passionate about. I never wrote for a TV series that I was super, passionate about. So, after my kids, made it through college and it's time for me to, I have a little leeway to think, financially what else I want to do. I can do something foolish like write books that doesn't make a lot of money. That's just what I love more, So that's what I did more. And, so that's what I've been doing. It's related to a couple other things, which is another thing I did for TV was I wrote a bunch of pilots. But my pilots so far have never made it to air. And I thought, I'll have a better chance of my pilots making it to air if they're based on intellectual property, if they're based on a book that's already been published. That's how the Hollywood world goes. So I thought, even for TV, it's kind of good. And it's kind of almost worked for me. The necklace, I'm hoping will get made as a movie, and my recent novel that just got published, 51%. NBC has hired me to write the TV adaptation. So I haven't exactly, left TV. I'm still doing it in that way. Um, so all of that is true, and I just wanted to write what I love. When I sit down now to my desk in the morning or to a table in the coffee shop in the morning, I'm writing something I love, I really care about. I know I'd love to read it if somebody else wrote it, and it's a really good feeling. So I'm just, it's a cliche, but I'm following my passion. I'm following my dreams.
One of the first books that you have really come out with was a lot of your was crap, my brain's gone blank. The Necklace. That was kind of one of your earlier ones that you wrote, and kind of going into now your latest one with 51%. This share with me a little bit about the background behind 51%.
Sure. I went to see a lecture by a famous TV producer named David Nevins one night, and he said that the best TV shows that he had been involved with, he worked on West Wing and ER and Will Meets Grace and Homeland, and he said that a lot of the ones that he liked best, that he said the best TV shows are the ones that address our deepest fears. They speak to our deepest fears. So when I was walking home that night, I thought, what are my deepest fears? And I thought the words that came to me were student loans. And so, I don't know why those words came to me, but they did. So I started thinking about student loans, and I was thinking about there's this new system of loans where instead of paying like a flat, fee or whatever on your loan, you pay a percent of your income for a number of years. So, they pay you to go to the corporation will pay for you to go to Purdue, and then you'll pay X percent of your income for whatever, 10 years, 15 years. And I thought that's kind of nice. It means if you're not making a lot of money, you don't owe a lot. On the other hand, it's kind of creepy. Somebody owns like a part of what you make. And I thought, what about a world where, there's no health insurance and people like Obamacare is a thing of the past. And if you, God forbid, get cancer, then you have to pay a percentage of your income to take care of that. Or, for childcare, you have to pay a percentage of your income. And what if you wind up being 51% owned by the corporations? What's that like? So that's where the book came from. And I used to say it was set 30 years from now. Now I say 20 years after 1 year of Trump. I'm putting it at 20 years. But we live in a world where the government is getting more and more inefficient and ineffectual and gridlocked, and big corporations are becoming and the oligarchs are becoming more and more powerful. So I created a world in this book where the just about everything's been privatized. Private big corporations, they own roads. You have to pay $2 a mile if you want to drive somewhere. They own police departments. The New York Police Department is now the New York Police Department Incorporated. And it's a world where even people are owned, as I say. And, the main plot of the book well, there are a couple plots, but one of them is there are two homicide detectives for the NYPD Incorporated who are trying to solve a case. And in this world, the detectives have to raise money to solve murders. So if there's a victim, I have to raise money from their spouse, from their neighbors, from their family, from their church. I might crowdfund the murder to get the whole, a lot of people to invest money. Try to make the murder as interesting as possible so I can make people invest. And that's the only way I'm going to get paid is if I raise money. And so that's the world that that's created here. And I think I think it's a fun book. It's a funny story, and there are people who are fighting for good. But it's also, a little scary because it is, I think, somewhat similar to the world we live in and we're heading toward.
So between working for TV shows and you're writing scripts for those and writing novels, which one do you prefer more now?
Absolutely writing novels. Absolutely. I love just doing what I care about, writing stories that I care about. And, like I say, I know I'm going to be passionate about it. 51%, I poured my heart into. The Necklace, Killer Story, the novel I'm writing now, I just pour my hearts into them. And it's just not like writing for a TV show where you're like, you know, okay, how can you always try to pour your heart into whatever you're writing. I might be writing an episode of a show that I didn't love very much, like Jag. I wrote for a show called Jag for a year, military show on CBS. And I didn't love it, but every time I would sit down and start to work on a story or a script, I'd say, I'm going to make this thing better than Shakespeare. This is going to be the best episode of Jag ever. It's going to transcend the genre. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be wonderful. But bottom line, at the end of it, I was still writing an episode of Jag. And now I don't get that feeling. Every book I write, I feel like this is going to be amazing. And it's exciting. I've been around the block a few times. I'm in my 60s now. And it's exciting to like feel like, wow, 51%. This is like the best book I've ever written. I'm still getting better as a writer. It's just a good feeling. Um, because you feel like you're still growing, even though you're getting older. It keeps you happy and excited and young. So for sure, books.
What's what's the hardest part about writing that most people wouldn't fully understand or just don't are not really aware of?
What would be the hardest part of writing a book? I mean, I guess the rewriting. It's amazing to me. I'll write a chapter and then I'll come back to it the next day and I'll be like, oh my gosh, how could I have written this? I mean, there's so many ways to improve it. And then I'll come back, a couple days later and I'll look at the same chapter and I say, wow, this really needs some work. Sometimes it's not until, quite a few go rounds that I'm like, I can look at it the next day and go, oh my God, this is pretty good. I don't think people know, how much I might care. Like today I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have adrenaline racing through the guy, or am I going to have adrenaline roaring through the guy? That might seem like a small thing, but like those small things add up to make a good book. And so I'm really thinking about every single, detail. I don't think they know how much writers care about every single word, that gets on the page. We really we really work at it. Um, what else? I think a lot of it some of it people know. I mean, it can be hard. You write a book and it takes a while to get a publisher to say yes. So that's a very difficult waiting period. So I think probably readers are kind of aware that that happens, that that's often a path. But I'd say those two things are certainly the hardest thing about being a writer, just rewriting and that, perfectionism you can have, which can be a good thing, and sometimes can get overly perfectionist. And then just the anxiety of seeing what's going to happen with your book. Those would be the two toughest things for sure. Yeah.
Kind of tying it, circling back to 51%, you've had it talks a lot about it talks about kind of detectives and them solving a murder, and the overall thing is about this kind of world that's ran and run by everything. Do you think our world is heading towards the same world that you describe in the book?
Yeah, it is what I see. I mean, I've been following politics now for 40 years, and I see so much is getting privatized. So, for instance, a lot of toll booths now are run privately. A lot of prisons are run privately. 9% of our prisoners are in private prisons. Uh, some parks have been privatized. A lot of schools, the charter school movement is to a large extent about privatizing schools. And there are a lot of politicians now that don't believe in public schools, and money to public schools is getting less. The military is largely privatized. A lot of the work in the military is being done by civilian companies that come in. Um, your water, good chance that your water has been privatized. That it used to be owned by the government would set it up, and now it's a private company. Same with electricity. Same with actually police. I mean, it's kind of amazing, but in the United States, we have two private policemen for every public policeman. Depends how you define the word like policeman. Like I'm talking about security guards, but you have two times as many people providing security privately than the public police. Because a lot of people feel they can't rely on the public police anymore, so you have to hire your own person. In cities, there are 5 times as many private police as there are public police. So, for instance, college campuses or gated communities, sometimes even housing projects will be transferred out to private corporations. And you name the field, private corporations getting more powerful, and the big ones obviously are getting powerful. We look at what's happening with Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire, and there's just a couple, Google and Amazon, and a couple of them have so much power. And so yeah, I definitely see the big in the book. There's the big six syndicates, big six corporate syndicates, and they own about 88% of all the wealth in America. And I definitely see that happening in the United States too. And, government has been getting smaller, which is the things that government do has been getting smaller. So, we'll see. I really think we have to, fight back on that. I think that people have to say, no, we want good health insurance. We want Obamacare, and we even want Obamacare to be improved. We want good schools. And not only do we want good schools, but we want good pre-Ks and we want good childcare. There's so many things that we can get if we fight for them, and I think that's important to do. So yes, I think right now it seems to me that the rich people in this country and the rich corporations in this country are getting more and more power, more and more money, more and more control over everything. And I know it sounds cliche, but we have to fight back.
If you could look into your books, and especially with this latest one, which character do you think you shine with and really relate to the most?
Well, this later one, it has 5 characters I really like, but I'll just talk about one of them or two of them. There's the two detectives are Juke O'Keefe and his partner Haley Navarro. And they come across it, beginning of the book, they come across this murder. And it's a poor poor young immigrant woman. And this is going to be a real dog case in the sense that they're not going to be able to raise money off of it because this woman, she doesn't have any family in the United States. They're not going to pay. Her family back in Crimea, they're not going to pay. She doesn't have neighbors or church. She's in a small community they're going to pay. And there's nothing about her that's really going to help them crowdfund. If she was killed by a serial killer, maybe they'd get some excitement and they'd get people, contributing money because it's always fun to get involved in catching a serial killer. Doesn't look like a serial killer. I mean, she's a good-looking woman, so that's worth a little bit of money. People like to, contribute toward that, but that's still not going to be much. But Juke O'Keefe, who's one of the heroes of the book, he's like this old school detective, and he's like no victim too small. He's like Harry Bosch in the Michael Connelly books and TV show. And no matter how little money he's going to make off of this case, even if he has to work, for 2 weeks and only get paid $20 for it, only be able to raise $20, half of the money goes to the detectives, half goes to the police department. And the police department is owned by the corporation, so the corporation gets that money. So he's gonna, he's still gonna do it, even if it's like nothing. So his partner, Haley Navarro, she's a good person. Her job is not exactly detective, even though she's his partner. She's the crime marketing expert. And her job is to sell the crime, to shoot videos that are going to get people to pay for this crime. She sees it's a dog case and she's broke. And not only is she broke, but she's pregnant. And also she's single. And also she's 20% owned because she had to give up 20% of her income to go to a high school and college. In this world, there's no such thing as a public high school anymore. So it's just private high school and college. So she's now 20% owned. And, she's so broke, she's been, living off of oatmeal for the past 3 weeks. And she's really worried that if there's any kind of complication with the baby, that she might wind up having to, give up more of her income. She could be 40% owned. She could end up being 51% owned. Then the corporations own her and they can tell her what to do with her life. They can push her around. So she's desperate. She does not want that kind of life for herself and also for her baby daughter who's in her womb and she promised she would never her daughter would never grow up in a way that she had. So she's pretty desperate. So she does not want to take this case at all. She says, come on, Juke, let's go uptown. There was this rich plastic surgeon just got killed on the Upper East Side. Let's go up there and solve work on that murder instead. But Juke does not. He's like, we got to work on this girl and solve this girl's murder and get justice for her. So Haley is very frustrated, and she's frustrated to the point that when the bad guys, which is a whole other story, that I won't complicate it by describing it all, but when the bad guys tried to get her to betray Juke, and to betray her partner. She's faced with a choice between betraying her partner and and she has to take care of her kid. Who's she going to take care of, Juke or her kid? And she winds up taking care of her unborn child and betraying Juke in a way that could have serious, extremely serious consequences for Juke. But she's a good person. So I had a lot of fun with her. To me, she's every person or every woman in the book. And she goes through this moral journey of, she's like all of us. We try to do good, but, we have to watch out for ourselves and our loved ones. She goes from this journey of just, you know, okay, I got to do what I got to do, to by the end, she realizes, shoot, even if it means, total crap for me. I've got to turn it around. So I really liked following her journey. She was very relatable to me, all the moral choices she was facing in the book. And then one other character I'll mention is a character called the Red Queen, and the Red Queen is one of the two villains in the book. And the Red Queen is an AI. She's the a very dangerous AI who is works for the Syndicate Intelligence Agency, which is descended from the old CIA, and so she's or it is going to do serious damage to both Juke and Haley, it was fun. It was fun having an AI as a main character. When I wrote the first draft of this book, AI was nowhere near as developed as it is now, so I was amused to see that everything that I foresaw in AI sort of is coming true. So,
So, looking at your whole career and spanning over what you've accomplished and been able to do, what's been the biggest thing that you are most proud of?
you know, I'm really proud of this of 51%. It puts a lot of all my feelings and about America and the world we live in into a book. And I was really glad to be able to do that. And it was exciting. It's a real page turner, and it's a thriller. So be able to do it in a way that's fun and a page turner and thriller, and just says what I have to say. And just seeing the reviews that I get of have been extremely positive, has been very rewarding. So I would say that, and then I would also say a play that I wrote, 30 years ago, called Sacred Journey, that was about it's a true story. It was about a homeless man I met on the streets of Brooklyn. And I wrote a one-man play based on his story. I interviewed him, and it's based on what he had to say. And I actually took him to see a one-man show on off Broadway, starring the great actor Cleavon Little, so he would know what a one-man show was and know what I was planning to do. Anyway, I wrote this play, and it was performed all over the world, and it was performed. The man himself was Native American, and the actor was Native American, and the actor was terrific. But it's hard if you're Native American to get a good acting role. This was a very good acting role. It was sort of the best, you know, role of his life, really, and he did it for years, and he became the character. Really, he was just wonderful, just terrific. And he died tragically of a brain aneurysm. And at his memorial service, everyone talked about um, this was how much he loved the play and how this was sort of the pinnacle of his life, his work life. And meanwhile, the play was performed in New York City, and the real life guy that the play was based on, he came to see it every night for the whole 8 week run. And just for him to see his life being acted out on stage, and for me to be sitting next to him and just see what he was experiencing and just be with him and talk to him before the show and after the show and go out for dinner and everything like that was just deeply moving. And the play was deeply moving to a lot of people. We had interesting audiences. We had not just your traditional audience, but we had a lot of Native Americans in the audience. We had a lot of poor people, homeless people in the audience, because the theater has often made a real effort to do some outreach for this play. We had a fair number of people in rehabs and recovering alcoholics there because that was part of the main character's or the character's story, the man's story. Um, so I would say all in all, and it was a really good play, you know. So all in all, I would say right now those two things, 51% and Sacred Journey are the things I'm most proud of for sure, or that stick out in my mind.
To anyone listening, if they are interested in maybe wanting to try writing in a TV or in a film kind of way, what advice do you have for them of how they can go about that process smoothly and be really successful?
The first advice I have is write, and that means, write a spec pilot, come up with an idea for a pilot and write it, or an idea for a movie and write it. Second advice I would give would be read or watch. So watch other TV shows in the same genre as the TV pilot that you're writing, or watch other movies in the same genre that you're writing and study them. The third advice for me, and I think for most writers, maybe not for all, but I think for most, it really helps if you join some kind of writing group and you get feedback on your script from other people on a continuing basis. So those are the first things, and then when you have a script you're really proud of, uh, then begins the process of looking for the right professional things to do. So I would say you know cold calling an agent probably doesn't work, but see any kind of connection you might have to a Hollywood agent or Hollywood manager. Um, you can also see if you can get a job on a show as a writer's assistant or a production assistant. That way you get to know people. Uh, you can also enter reputable contests. I mean, make sure they're reputable. And sometimes that can give you a leg up if you win a certain kind of contest. It can help you get an agent or a manager. Um, so those are what I would say. And in addition to that, I would start writing your second, you know, TV pilot or screenplay, movie screenplay, because obviously often your second one will be better than your first. So just keep writing at the same time as your marketing. Um, you know, I think that when you're getting started, it can be a good idea to live in LA or New York, but especially LA. You don't have to, and LA is kind of expensive, so there's some virtue to living in a non-expensive place and just having more time, to do writing because you don't have to pay, $1 trillion for an apartment. Um, I think, I think that's it basically. When when it's time to get an agent, hopefully you have a good either TV pilot script or a good movie script, and maybe something else too. It might even be your. it's good to have two pieces of things to show an agent or a manager. So, but your second one could be maybe a short story or a play or maybe even an article you've a nonfiction piece you've written or a novel or a lot of different things. Oh, and the other thing I'll say is that sometimes people will also this didn't used to be the case, but it is now. Sometimes people will write it or shoot a short 3-minute segment or 5-minute segment of whatever uh, TV show pilot or movie they're working on to shoot a little bit as a proof of concept. And I guess one of your backup pieces that you can show people is any kind of YouTube video that you do that you think shows off your writing skills. That's also another type of thing you can show people. So in sum, write at least one, you know, pilot or screenplay that you're really happy with, and then start working on that. And as part of the process, just write it, read stuff in your genre, and hopefully join a writers group too. And I think those would be that would be my main advice.
Well, Matt, I appreciate you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the podcast today to share your story and to share what all you've been able to achieve and accomplish. To anyone listening, if they would like to check your books out, if they would like to read and maybe check out your portfolio and just would like to follow you, where can they go to learn more about you?
They can go to my website, mattwittenwriter.com, and they can follow me on Instagram, and I'm Matt Witten 22 on Instagram. And yeah, they can get my books anywhere at independent bookstores or Amazon, but anywhere. And thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I enjoy your podcast.
And I will put all of these links in the description box below. So just feel free to go down below, look for the links that I have there, and you're more than welcome to follow him and support him. Feel free to follow and subscribe to the podcast as well. If you want to connect with me, you can go to my website, noahspodcast.com. There you'll find links to my socials and where the podcast is available. Feel free to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Southern Dot Reads. Check out my Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages at Noah's Podcasts. And yeah, feel free to check those out. And all those links will be in the description box as well. I appreciate you all so much for tuning into today's episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Southern Reads.